Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm here today to give you the first official update as I write my first series to market. This is something that I announced a while back and I've come a long way since then. So today I'm talking to you about the research phase and what I've been doing to get this process started and what exactly I'm doing when I talk about writing to market. I'm pretty much following Chris Fox's book, Write to Market, step by step. And that's what I love about his book, is that it's pretty specific and detailed and full of exercises that any writer can follow to write their first book to market and really start to see some good book sales, writing something that they love, which maybe before, you've only written for love, and that's okay too. But if you're in it to make a living off of this and support your family, it's really important for you to start to see some substantial sales. If you're like me, you're a writer because you love to write and you love to tell stories, but you also need to support your family, right? So, you need to sell some books. And sometimes we write things that don't always sell books as much as we love it. And sometimes we just need to tweak a few things in order to really find those crazy loyal fans that will buy everything we write. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm finding that balance between what I love and what readers love. And that's what I mean when I say write to market, is that you're finding that middle between what's in your wheelhouse as a writer and what will sell. And this whole process that I'm going through, the first part of the process is just figuring out what that is. And it's going to be different for different kinds of writers. But any writer, like I said, can pick up the book and go through the exercises themselves, hop on Amazon and figure out what they can write, what kind of stories they can tell that readers want right now. And I have actually done this. Like I said, I've gone step by step through Chris's book, and I've read the book already like at least 2 times, and I've made highlights and notes. But throughout the process, I've just been keeping everything in this journal, and you can see where my kids have gotten to it. But yeah, they've scribbled inside it, but I can still read my notes. And I've just done all of the exercises, you guys. And I think I heard him say one time that he can put all this information out there and tell you exactly what he did, but 99.9% of writers aren't actually going to follow every single exercise step by step, every single detail. And that's basically what I've done. And that's what I'm doing throughout this whole process, is taking Chris up on his challenge of writing to market, following all of his exercises. And that's what I've written down in this notebook. And I literally just went chapter by chapter, doing everything he said, doing the exercises at the end of each chapter to figure out how I can write to market and hit it out of the park with my next YA series. So I've kind of broken this up today for you. The first part of the write to market process. This is a lot of what's in the book, but it's not everything, and I'll be going through everything else in future videos. But for today, I'm just telling you what I did through the research phase, which is where you decide what you're going to write, if it will sell, figuring out the tropes, learning the tropes. So basically, step number 1 when you want to write to market is that you need to pick your market. It needs to be something that you love, that is interesting to you, that makes you want to write it, some kind of genre that fits all of those things, but also something that readers want as well. And so you want that overlap. It's crucial. Something that you want to write, something that readers want to read. And so basically you just go onto Amazon and you're gonna go through the different kinds of categories, any kind of category that interests you, maybe make a list, and then you're going to go through each one and you're going to see if any of those categories fit the requirements that Chris outlines in his book. So you're going to go to the category page on Amazon and you're going to analyze the top 100 books. So first you're going to look at the top book, and you're going to ignore any books that are on sale for 99 cents or a box set pre-order or anything like that, just like the top regular book at like a regular price. And then you're going to check out the ranking, and it should be in the top 1,000 or so. The top 20 book in that category should be in like the top 2,000 or so, because that's telling you that that's a genre that readers are actually hungry for. And then the last 2 pages, Chris says, should be in the top 25,000, so no more than that. Otherwise, there's not that much demand for it. So when I did this exercise, I had a few different categories in mind. One of them was YA romance, which I've written 2 series in, and they've never sold like hotcakes or anything like that. They've done okay. I've made some money off of them, but I'm not making a living at this from those 2 series, which is kind of a bummer. But I was surprised to see that YA romance fits these requirements pretty well, and so I decided, why not? The other category that I was looking at was kind of like superhero. I was interested in writing some kind of a YA superhero series, but that category just didn't seem to fit, and what really seemed to fit was this one, YA contemporary romance. And so I thought, I already have a small fan base. I already have 8 books in YA romance. If I can write my next series, have all the tropes that the readers are looking for, all the expectations for tropes, for the characters, for what happens, for the covers, for the title, that kind of thing. I mean, this can really be my shot at finally making a full-time income from my books. What I really want to stress here is that you want to pick something that you love and that also fits the right to market requirements, because you don't want to be stuck writing something that you're going to end up hating. I mean, that's helping no one. The readers are going to be able to tell, and you're not going to have any fun. And part of this is writing something that you love and having fun with it and getting to make a boatload of sales. So that was step number 1, is picking the right market. Step number 2 is to learn the tropes by reading the top books and the top reviews for those books. And this is in the book too, and he gives you lots of specifics on what to do here. But basically, you're just going to read the top selling books for this category. Again, not like 99-cent sales with like 5 reviews or box sets or anything like that. Just like maybe books that you've noticed have been sticky for a while at their regular price and didn't come out like 10 years ago. As for me, I've read a lot of romance in the past. It's probably the genre that I've read the most, but most of it has been new adult romance. I was a huge fan of it when it first became popular, and I still read it, but I also read a ton of other stuff, and I hadn't read a lot of straight up YA contemporary stuff lately. Just a couple of things. When it came to YA, recently I had been reading more of like the popular stuff, like Hunger Games, Maze Runner. I had read The Fault in Our Stars, but that I wouldn't say that's a romance because it doesn't have the happily ever after. Spoiler. Harry Potter was another one that I've read, but not really any of the top sellers in my category. I knew who they were, I knew the authors, I knew the titles and the books, but I hadn't actually read them yet. And so that was like my first mistake with my first couple of a series is, writing from my heart, which is awesome, but not really knowing what the readers were expecting. And so that's probably what happened before, is that those 2 things weren't aligning. And so yeah, it was time for me to finally learn the YA romance tropes and figure out what was missing from my previous books that I was going to make sure to have in this next YA romance series. So I looked at the top 20, and I picked out the 3 books, again, that I knew had been sticky for a long time, even at their regular price, that I knew fit what I wanted to write and weren't 99-cent sales or box sets, and had lots of really good reviews. This kind of goes back to what Chris says in his book. You want to pick something with at least 1,000 reviews or close to it, and published within the last year if possible, because this is telling you if it has this many reviews and it was only published in the last year, then you know this is the kind of thing that readers want right now. These 3 books that I picked pretty much met all of these requirements. Some of them like just about quite met them. Maybe they had a little bit under 1,000 reviews, or they were published, a year and a half ago or something, but they were still really sticky. And I think that's just because like YA romance is, it does fit the right to market requirements, but maybe not as well as another genre like the space opera category that everybody's been raving about since Chris Fox came out with his books. And then I also noticed that there were some niches even within the YA romance category, and there was a little bit of overlap sometimes, but there were books that kind of were different in some way. Like some were more of a sports romance, some were more like a tragic, sad story like The Fault in Our Stars, some were more fun and quirky like Adorkable, some were more like emotional or dealt with social issues like Reason to Breathe, and others had something that really set them apart. They were more like high concept, like Everything, which was about a girl with a super rare disease and she's allergic to the world, pretty much. I mean, that's kind of crazy, right? And so there were books that I saw that kind of fit into these different mini categories. Although, like I said, there was also some overlap. So here's what I learned after reading these 3 books and looking at the top reviews for each book. So modern Cinderella retellings are hot. Readers go crazy for them. 2 of the 3 books that I read were Cinderella retellings. And it was pretty clear from the covers and from the titles that they were Cinderella retellings and from the blurbs. Also, for YA romance, readers don't want anything too explicit on the page. Sex can happen, but it needs to be either behind closed doors or told briefly and poetically, not in any detail really. And towards the end of the book, when the boy and girl finally, get together, it's not like every chapter. Also, a lot of these YA books have some kind of ordinary girl in an extraordinary situation, even if it's kind of not super extraordinary, but just kind of like a girl that her college boyfriend dumps her the night of prom as she's about to go in, and she meets this stranger that's a cute boy and she convinces him to be her fake boyfriend for the night. Or it can be even more extraordinary, like Everything, where again she has a disease where she's allergic to the world. Readers just want some kind of extraordinary, hard to believe element, not just your average girl, average day kind of thing. So I think I did this a little bit with my second YA romance series, but not as much as I could have. And it's definitely one of those things that I'm really going to pay attention to as I write my next series. Another thing that I learned that readers like is that the story needs to be about how the guy and the girl get together, and it needs to have a happily ever after or a happily ever after for now, if they're going off to college or something. The protagonist needs to be a teenage girl, usually 17, 11th or 12th grade, usually the good girl. The story needs to have a coming of age feel. They're growing up, they're figuring out life in some way. Maybe they're figuring out their next steps towards college or that kind of thing. The boy she falls in love with plays a critical role in this coming of age part, and together they kind of figure things out. They go on this journey of self-discovery and growing up. The guy needs to be sweet and a good guy, and usually they're pretty mature for their age. And it can be a friend or someone they just met. The parents usually play a minor role or they're dead, like in their Cinderella retellings, obviously. One of the ones that I saw did have the dad still there, but there were still lots of conflict there, kind of like the whole step-parent kind of thing. Friends or even frenemies play a big role in the story. The protagonist must confront her flaw by the end of the story in order to get the guy in the end. School and college plays a big role, whether they're going to school in the story or, they're thinking about college. They may have liked or like in the beginning of the story some other guy that doesn't really deserve them and is maybe a little bit of a jerk. The protagonist usually thinks she's pretty average or thinks of herself as average, but everybody else, obviously, everybody else usually thinks she's really pretty or clever or smart, except her. Especially if it's a Cinderella retelling, she's often stuck in horrible circumstances out of her control, or maybe she's lost everything. As far as pricing, I noticed that the top indies tend to price at $5 or $5.99. Traditional publishers usually price their stories at $9.99, and there's a lot of like $2.99 and 99 cents, but usually the top selling people are pricing at $5 or $5.99. I also noticed that the guys and girls usually balance each other out in some way. So maybe the protagonist is more of, a quiet good girl, and the guy she falls in love with is more like outgoing and a little bit more of a bad boy type of feel. In one case, in a Cinderella retelling, it was actually a book that they both loved and it was their favorite book, and that's what brought them together and how they met online. Another thing is that the story has to have a clear, authentic YA voice. For the most part, I've read a lot of YA, and I feel like, and I know a lot of teenagers too, and I was a teacher, And so I feel like I can tell sometimes it's an adult writing the YA story, but for the most part, the YA voice is done pretty well. And the titles are usually unique and catchy in some way. Everything, Everything, The Fault in Our Stars, Cinder and Ella, that one kind of tells you right away that it's a Cinderella retelling. The Law of Tall Girls, I love those titles. Those are really good titles, and I think this is one area where I really need to up my game. The covers are usually clean, they're colorful, they catch your eye, and they have big, pretty lettering font. It makes you want to buy the book just because it's so pretty. Let me share a few of the top things that I saw in the reviews. And again, it's important to look at both the 5 stars and the 1 stars. Okay. So here are some 1-star reviews for one of the Cinderella retellings. Seemed to be written by a high schooler. Like, that to me didn't make sense. Like, of course it should be written by a high schooler. It's a YA romance. Somebody said it was terribly cliche and predictable, but I mean, those readers, the true fans, they want that. They want the Cinderella retelling, and they don't want you to veer off too much from that. Let me go to a couple of the 5-star reviews. They're a sucker for Cinderella retellings. They couldn't put it down. What teenage girl hasn't dreamed of having someone famous fall for her and sweep her off her feet? It was fun to dream and escape into a fun story. Again, this is why they're reading. So hit these things when you write your book description and you're writing your story. Fairy tale. It's beautiful messages of love and acceptance. Gave me all the feels. That's a huge one. I kept seeing that one. Tears and smiled and laughed out loud. Seriously fun escape from the housework. Again, not all your YA readers are young adults. A lot of them are women around my age or older, even retired, who are reading to escape their lives, the housework, or, you know, they have a lot of free time because they're retired now. So keep that in mind. They were disappointed that the Druid Prince isn't a real book. Again, this in the Cinderella retelling that I read was so good. The Druid Prince is the book that they both love, and from the way the author tells it, I mean, you feel like it's a real book, so I love that. Nothing too graphic or over the top. Again, they didn't want too much sex on the page. I can't read my own handwriting. Made me think and ponder and feel things. Engaging yet clean. Raw yet enchantingly wonderful read. Will live in your heart forever. Who doesn't want that kind of review? Will both melt and break your heart. Strong female lead, but not perfect. Perfect banter. This is what I am going to be going for with my series. And let me go to the other book that I read. It wasn't a Cinderella retelling, but it was a YA romance, and it was more of like an emotional, darker story, but still really good. Okay, so some of the top reviews for this other book. Emotional, phenomenal love story, complex characters. The ending was frustrating, shocking, unanswered questions. This is a series where it kind of ends on a cliffhanger and then there's more books. Sex was tastefully done. Raw emotions. So again, it's really important for you to read those top reviews after you've read the story to figure out what it is that resonates with the readers of this genre. And if you're a YA author like me and this is a category that you'd like to write to market in, some of the top reads that I would recommend are Cinderella, one of my favorites, Everything, Everything, another really good one, The Fault in Our Stars. It doesn't have that happily ever after, but you can learn a lot from the writing style and the characters and how the story is done. The Law of Tall Girls, I haven't read this one, but it's on my TBR along with Curveball, and both of those books I've noticed are just really sticky and the readers are loving it. Anything by Amy Sparling, I've read her book, The Villain Boyfriend, that was pretty good. More of an like average girl, like high school situation. And then Reason to Breathe, which was the darker, more emotional romance, but still really good. Just anything in your category that you noticed has been sticky for a long time is a good contender for what you should read. Okay, so that was step 2. So step 1 was figure out the right market. Step 2, learn the tropes by reading the top books and the reviews. And step 3, figure out your speed of execution. And so a big component of writing to market is publishing regularly and staying up in the algorithms and in readers' faces so that you can consistently build a readership and have consistent sales and that kind of thing. And so a big part of this is figuring out your publishing process, your writing process, how long each step takes you, so that your publishing schedule is predictable and that you set deadlines for yourself and you have your next book out and you're not forgotten in your readers' minds. This can be hard when you're a mom, because if when you're pregnant and you have a kid, like, it's going to be a good year before you publish another book or more. But if your kids are more grown up, then maybe you can commit to publishing every 3 to 6 months. I'm going to aim for every 3 to 6 months. Hopefully, I'm going to aim for 3, and then if it ends up being like 4, I'll be fine with that. But you basically just need to sit down, look at your whole process, be realistic with how long each step takes you, and go from there and set a deadline for this very first book. When are you going to hit publish? And you're going to budget time for the outlining, the drafting, the editing, sending it to another editor, formatting, the back matter, the book description, all of that good stuff. You need to figure out how much time you're going to give yourself to do that and not go crazy or burn out, but still be consistent. You know, when can you hit publish on this next book? It needs to be soon. Whenever you do decide to hit publish on book 1, preferably have book 2 ready, book 3 in the works, even maybe in your head. But you know, when you're writing to market and you want to be consistent, you want to have book 2 just about ready to go in case you fall behind, and just so readers know it's coming and you can use that pre-order to your advantage. And again, doing all of this is just going to help you build momentum faster. It's going to help you take advantage of pre-orders and build that readership and make a living with your books that much faster. So yeah, that's all I have for you today. If you want to learn more about the whole write to market thing, definitely check out Chris Fox's book, Write to Market, and he has several more books in his series about all of his publishing knowledge. He knows so much, and he goes a lot more in depth than I did here, lots of specific exercises and things like that in his book for you to follow. Anybody can do it. So yeah, that's what the write to process market has been like for me so far. This right now has been the research phase. I hope that was helpful for you if you want to write to market yourself, so that you can finally make a living at this whole writing thing, writing what you love and what readers love. I'll be back soon with another update because I've done even more since then. This has just been like the first part of the process. I'm now on to the next part. I'll tell you more in my next update and what I'm doing to now create my own written to market YA romance series. I'm super excited. I can't wait to tell you more about it, and until I can finally get this series out in front of readers. If you have any questions for me, leave them below. I'm happy to answer them. Thanks again for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss my future videos on creating a happy and healthy life while building a successful author business. Keep creating your art. Bye.